Soleimani's dead. You might disagree with his assassination, but what should happen now? We are where we are.
Yeah, I mean, there was this assassination. It has a grave effect on us. It affects our security. We have troops in Iraq. They are lightly armed. They are training Iraqis in fighting ISIS. So they're very vulnerable. We've got civilians there. We've got our embassies. We weren't told, and suddenly this happens. And it's obviously a major lurch towards war. So what do we do? Well, one of the things we do have in our armoury is we're a member of the Security Council. And we're not there to be decorative. We actually have a role. And what we should be doing is demanding an emergency sitting of the Security Council with the heads of nations. And we should make sure that both sides understand that they must not behave in a way which is illegal. I mean, clearly the Iranians are behaving in an illegal way, but so are the Americans.
So you would go to the UN Security Council and say what? You want a resolution?
And I would say that we should be bringing the world together and speaking with one voice. There must not be a war. Both sides have got to stop acting illegally and they've got to step back. Remember 17 years ago...
Is this a message to Donald Trump primarily?
Well, it's to both sides. I mean, obviously, we know that one of the reasons why Soleimani had been on people's radar for such a long time is because for decades he had behaved in a way that was illegal. But the question was it so risky to take him out, to use the horrible phrase, because everybody knew what the response would be. I mean, he is essentially the head of the Iranian Defence Forces. So what we should do, as happened 17 years ago in the run-up to the Iraq War, was that the UN did play a major role. Where is the United Nations in all of this?
You saw the hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of Tehran. It's hard to know who would care less about a UN resolution, Iran or Donald Trump tonight.
No, that's the point. That's why you have to use the weight of world opinion. And the only stage that we have
you think that's
is the United
stop
Nations. What I'm saying is that there should have been... So we just kind of go, oh, well, you know, he's so unpredictable, let's not do anything. No, you have to do what you can do. And we're on the Security Council. There should have been an emergency hearing of the Security Council, and the world should have had an opportunity to come together and say, back off, both sides. Now let us try. I mean, you know, Boris Johnson talks about de-escalating, but that's all he says. He doesn't do anything to try to de-escalate.
So what would you do now with UK troops? I mean, in very practical terms, we know that nothing happens that quickly through the UN, certainly not through a Security Council which could face vetoes. What would you actually do tonight if you were Foreign Secretary in terms of UK troops, in terms of the possible retaliations that Iran might be planning now? Where would you go?
So if I was Foreign Secretary tonight, I would still be calling for an emergency meeting of the Security Council. I do think that's the first thing that one should do. Of course, we also need to be protecting our people as best we can. But we do have, we have members of the armed forces embedded with Iraqi troops. They have been training them. We have been arming them in order to fight ISIS.
So would you now be saying we've got to get them out?
Well,
or that's even more dangerous?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not briefed on the details of how we can make them safe. But clearly the priority must be to ensure that they are made safe. So however that happens, because
we heard Boris Johnson, obviously he gets the full briefing, and I understand you don't, but he wants the troops to stay in Iraq, in Baghdad. Do you?
Well, Baghdad is one thing, right? What I'm talking about is where they are out fighting ISIS. So they're a long way away from the capitals. They they essentially rely on, as I understand it, American air fire to protect them. Well, what are the Americans doing tonight? Are they going? You know, are they going to be providing air power help for British troops that are training Iraqi military at the moment, when the Iraqi military, given how volatile the mood is...
If the US goes, we should go automatically, or we should stay anyway?
I mean, I'm not in a position to be able to say, because I'm not given the briefing, so that I can't. I would make the decisions based on evidence that I haven't been given.
Politically, and I understand that you're calling on the UN for a resolution, but Peter Ricketts, Lord Ricketts, made that case of Britain having to choose in a way where it's facing now, what it says. Do we stand with EU leaders? Do we stand up to Trump? Do we recognise America is still our closest ally in whatever special relationship we have? Where is the diplomacy in this now?
I think what we do is what we have to have as our lodestone is we look after what's in our best interests. Now, I mean, I appreciate that he's saying we might need to have a deal, you know, a deal with the Americans when it comes to trade, but we also have to get a deal with the European Union when it comes to trade. And what's more, when we leave the European Union, there's another 40 free trade arrangements that we have to negotiate with 60 other countries once we leave.
So is there a third way? Do you believe what you've just heard?
Yeah,
that
so
there
the way
is a
that
perfectly
is,
good third way between Europe and the US, yes.
I think that the way you do it is that you go back to basics, and the basics are that you abide by international law and that you are a force for good. And that's what we used to be. We used to amplify other voices that were like our own, that believed the same things as us. Because we're a small country, you find allies and you work together. And you say, and one of the reasons that we are so interested in international, multilateral institutions and international law is because obviously it's in our interests for those things, the interest of the world, but it's in the interest of Britain in particular, for that to be the way in which things are done.
You're not disagreeing. I don't think you're disagreeing with anything that we've heard from Boris Johnson so far. I mean, you're pretty much on the same page as Sharon Fontaine.
Hang on. I mean, I think he said that he could understand.
He called for de-escalation.
No, he called for de-escalation. But I think that his foreign secretary has said that they understand why the Americans have done what they've done, and Boris Johnson has said that he understands. Well, I have not seen any evidence at all, and insiders, from what we're told, is that the evidence that they were under the threat of imminent attack was extremely scanty. I mean, the State Department tonight is in turmoil. You know, you're getting different briefings from different factions within the State Department telling you different things, but the one thing they do say is the evidence, the so-called evidence that they were under threat of imminent attack is really embarrassingly feeble.
You don't believe that?
Well, I'm just telling you what we're told at the moment, and so therefore it's interesting that we have a foreign secretary who says that the Americans had a right to defend themselves. Well, if that's right, then presumably he's seen some evidence that nobody else seems to have seen. You don't make the presumption just because Donald Trump tweets something that it might be true, I'm afraid, because he has a very loose relationship with the truth. You need to see evidence, and if we were real allies of America, proper allies of this administration, we're allies of America, but not this administration. If we were proper allies of this administration, they would have told us in advance, and they would have told us the reasons why, and we would have had that evidence shared with us, because we've always shared intelligence with them. So I think that we are fooling ourselves that we are close allies with Donald Trump. I think that Theresa May have held his hand, and Boris Johnson may do a sort of Donald Trump tribute act, but that hasn't been enough for us to remain close friends with this administration. And in the end, therefore, I think the best thing to do is to just tell the truth and to say, this is a lurch towards war, this is catastrophic, this was reckless, this was the wrong thing to do, let's have an emergency session of the Security Council, let's call it out, let's call out both sides, and then, you know, and be on the right side.
Emily, we've got a sense over the past few years of where the Emily Thornberry foreign policy would come from. I know you're standing for the leadership of your party now. Give us a taste of how you could define Thornberryism for us.
I don't believe in all of that stuff. I just come from the heart of the Labour Party. I mean, I've been a member of the Labour Party for 40 years. I was born in the party. I will die in the Labour Party. My mother was a Labour councillor. I was brought up on a council estate by a single parent. And so when you say what's Thornberryism, I say what it is coming from the heart of the Labour Party, and that is what I have always been. And I want to unite our party. I want us to do well, which means doing what we were set up to do, which is winning elections. We were set up by working people to win elections and to make sure that our country went in the right direction. And I think that we have been sliding to the right so that our safety net has massive holes in it. The whole families fall through it. We don't have opportunities for people in the way that we should. We don't invest in our country, throughout our country, in the way that we should. And we don't have an ethical foreign policy.
But what differentiates you? I mean, if I put you side by side with Keir Starmer, you come from the same side of the party, you say pretty much the same things, you took the same stance more or less on Brexit. Why would it be you, not Keir Starmer?
Well, the competition is just starting tomorrow, so that's the first day. Let's see what the membership makes of it. I think that you may find that as the campaign goes on, there will be differences between us. I mean, I took a fairly strong stand that we shouldn't, for example, have agreed to a general election. I don't think that we should have agreed to a general election under those circumstances. I think that given that it was going to be a Brexit election, it gave Boris Johnson the opportunity to wrap himself up in the lie and therefore to win the election. He was going to get Brexit done, which he won't do. And we have given him 5 years in power, and I made it perfectly clear that I was against that, and we should have stuck to having a referendum.